villains from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where the smallest man is the biggest man. I'm your host, Bob Oiled Garbage Bag Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who else is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and come on, Clarissa, explain it all.
I will, and who is our very special Patreon backer guest?
I'm Dave Whittington, and all I do is crawl through holes, half that size, mind you.
Wow, impressive. And today's episode is the Venture Brothers episode, Escape to the House of Mummies, Part 2.
This is getting stupid.
And he's right about that. So let me talk to Dave here. Dave is one of our highest tier backers. Because of that, he's able to be on this and another episode. So, Dave, why did you choose this one? And also, thank you very much for giving us lots of money.
Well, first of all, you're welcome. I'm just so great like that. But no, in all seriousness, I picked this episode in large part as opposed to the last one I picked. I actually picked this to try to fit the format of like a one-off podcast. The Venture Brothers has a tenuous relationship with continuity at times. But in season 1, it's very episodic. It's all over the place. But then when they get to season 2, the writing kind of takes a big leap. This is, we're doing season 2, episode 4. Mm-hmm. So I want to do an episode that didn't require too much continuity to understand what's going on, but also just, one I liked a lot. Because we actually had a discussion of sorts, I guess, on Twitter about which episode to pick. And, Vivos Los Muertos, which is later in the season, was really close to being the pick, but there's so much continuity in that.
Yeah,
you have to explain a lot to get to the episode.
To get more into this, I do want to know our history with Venture Brothers, and I love the show, but I feel like at a certain point, I'm already bagging on the show we're doing, by the way. At a certain point, they got maybe a little too much in love with their own lore, and that kind of pushed me away.
I do want to say that's an understandable feeling. I actually have heard that from other people, because it started off very episodic. Like season 1, it doesn't matter what order you watch the episodes in, except for maybe the last one, I guess.
That's very true.
The last couple kind of run together.
Yeah, last two, I think. But
I was a viewer from day one, and I love bragging about that I watched TV before other people.
Liked it before it was cool.
But yeah, it was the pilot that aired. I think I first saw the pilot in the Christmas special time of 2003, or they aired pilots on Adult Swim at times like that. And then when the show began, I was like, this is the show for me. It is a show for people who have consumed too much media, but also are depressed and have problems. And I remember waiting for that second season to start for so fucking long.
Well, we're in that now. As a Venture Brothers fanboy myself, we're in that now. It's been several years since the last one. It's when I was doing research for this, actually, I'm just going to throw this out here real quick, there was one of the interviews with the creators. It was like, how does it feel to be the longest running show on Adult Swim? I'm like, I guess that's technically true, but you have 70 episodes in 15 years.
Yes. I guess all the original 2001 things have been canceled. Even Aqua Teen Hunger Force ended. But Venture Brothers is, if you count the pilot, it's 15 years old.
I know.
The pilot aired in February of 2013. Sorry, 2003. I want to make this more recent. And the series debuted in August of 2004.
Yeah.
Man,
so
and this, but I love the show from the beginning because it's so dense, it's so funny, and it is made by, as I would come to find out about the creators of the show, they are guys like me who read too many comic books or watched too many things. And it's just the idea of that it begins as a Johnny Quest parody and blooms into the, every piece of media technically exists in the Venture Brothers universe.
Yeah, it started off, you're right, just as a Johnny Quest parody, but then it became so much more. And I remember waiting for that second season, and actually this is this will date me and the show so much. Going to Doc Hammer's live journal.
No, it was Jackson Publick.
Jackson Publick. Yeah. Listen, they both had live journals. It was 2003. But I remember going to both of them, and that's where you would hear information about the show.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
Just dying to know, so has it been renewed or what? Because the season 1 ends on a mega cliffhanger, and they weren't renewed, which is why it took 2 fucking years. So, they finished the show. Months afterwards, they're officially renewed. Then in 2005, you're like, well, at least I got the DVDs for season 1. And eventually, I'll see season 2 and know if the leads are dead.
One thing I want to ask is how much you want to dig into what the show's about, because I don't have a good sense of how well known the show is. I feel like outside of the nerd circles that I exist in, it's not well known at all. But within nerd circles, like everyone seems to know it. So I don't know if it's that popular or not.
I think Adult Swim's slow to the draw on the show has made it sort of less popular than it was, because I stopped watching after season 4 because I forgot it existed. I was like, no more Venture Brothers. I didn't even know it came back for 2 more seasons. It was off my radar. But I feel like at a certain point, it was sort of the Rick and Morty of Adult Swim. It was never as huge as Rick and Morty, but it was the first like really high profile show with real animation.
Yeah.
Because the early Adult Swim lineup kind of had a not fair reputation as stoner comedy, and so Venture Brothers kind of stood out from like the Aqua Teen Hunger Forces.
It was stoner comedy that like
Xavier Archangel.
that didn't matter, that didn't tell a complete story. It's like, I would love watching an episode of C-Lab, but it didn't matter. Like,
it was like Dadaist humor with like zero animation as like color form sliding around the screen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, Venture Brothers was full animation from people with a background in real animation. That was a big difference between it and the original run of Adult Swim shows too, because most Adult Swim shows were done by former Turner interns who then worked on Space Ghost and then moved from Space Ghost onto their own show, which basically was just more Space Ghost.
And they would ask like C. Martin Croker to draw characters once, and then they would just move them around in a computer. That's his name, right?
Yep.
Okay.
The late C.
Martin Croker. R.I.P. Very important to Adult Swim and to Cartoon Network stuff.
Yeah, but Venture Brothers was a huge. To me, it was a huge deal when it first aired. I kind of had the same. I've watched every episode, but I had a similar fall off to Bob of just not caring as much as I did, because after the season 4 finale at the prom is basically a series finale. It can operate as a series finale if you want it to.
They've said that there was a plan at one point that would be the series finale. Like that was at one point planned to be the end, and then at some point it wasn't. But yeah, that's totally understandable. It was designed for that.
It did feel like that. But in terms of our show history, I like Henry, I'm also a day one viewer. Take that, Henry. I was there too. But also, I remember in 2003.
I was on the East Coast, so I saw it an hour before.
That's right. I was on the West Coast. So
I was on the East Coast too.
Oh,
well, you guys beat me by 3 hours. Then,
okay, that's so we're all heroes in this room. But I didn't want to say. I did want to say that this is a weird time for Adult Swim in that there were like competing pilots in 2003. There was this. There was, I believe, Welcome to Eltingville.
Yeah.
Something called Saddle Rash, which was like the home movies people. It was about a cowboy without arms and legs.
That wasn't a very good one.
No. But this one seemed like the obvious winner, but there was still like, when will they pick up Venture Brothers? This seems like the obvious choice to make into a series. But again, I think they were gun-shy, like, this looks expensive, you know.
Yeah, it does look expensive. I mean, the pilot is done in Flash, but it needed full animation when they finally got to the show.
I mean, it is still fairly limited animation, but there are still like it's sort of like anime in that the drawings are limited, but the drawings you see are very well done.
Also, it is a New York production with real actors in it, not just guys who live in Atlanta.
Yeah,
it's like, well,
call up who's the guy who plays Master Shake? Dana Snyder.
Yeah. But they also just anybody in Atlanta. They're like, well, who does radio commercials? Like, he could be Space Ghost. Like,
yeah, actually, Dana Snyder is a character on the series later.
I was about to say, yeah.
As the Alchemist. I love him as the Alchemist. He's great. It was more fuller animated. It was a half hour as well. Like, it had so much more intent and planning to it, and it hired people who had worked in animation before, like Jackson Publick, aka Chris McCullough.
Yes.
And Doc Hammer, last name withheld. I don't know
his real name is Eric Hammer.
Yeah,
so
okay.
It's not a stretch. But let's talk about the show's history. So again, over the course of 14 years, there have been 6 seasons and 71 episodes and 1 pilot and 4 specials. And like we said, there have been notoriously long breaks between seasons. I think twice there was 3 years between seasons, but we're currently in one of those periods. There are 2 seasons coming. One reportedly will air this year.
Yeah.
They're saying
November.
November.
Maybe.
So maybe early 2019.
I'm skeptical, but yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah.
But these are all on Hulu, I believe, right?
Everyone.
Yeah.
At the time of this recording, it's been over 2 years since the last 2 episodes. Like,
And the premise, as we talked about before, it's like basically like a cynical and more realistic look at Johnny Quest. Like what would happen if Johnny Quest grew up? And it basically mixes the thrilling pulp adventures of those cartoons and comics with like the mundanity of everyday life and also horrible interpersonal relationships. Like every character there are no good relationships on this show.
And not to be all old man yells at cloud, but do we need to explain what Johnny Quest is? Because that's like 1960s.
Yeah, go for it.
I watched it as a kid, in syndication. Obviously, I wasn't born in the 60s, but Johnny Quest was the adventures of the titular Johnny Quest. He was a kid who got into all sorts of adventures with his doctor dad. his bodyguard. Was it Benton Quest?
Well, Benton Quest was his father.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Benton Quest, and then
Race Bannon.
Race Bannon. Thank you.
I like him as Dasho Pepper from the Freakazoid.
And then he had his, his foreign friend Haji, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, very much.
And then his dog Bandit.
Yeah.
And they would go on James Bondish type adventures, but also in a very 60s pop art Marvel style way. Like it was, I forget the name of the artist who created that show, but it was very Jack Kirby-esque.
Yeah,
or
for sure.
Steranko, all those type from that same style. Alex Toth.
I actually tried to look up to see if there was a Johnny Quest episode like this was based off at all. And, I wasn't going to watch 200 episodes of Johnny Quest, but I did see one that was called The Curse of Anubis.
Okay.
Which, it's not quite a pyramid cult, but it does take place, obviously, in very stereotypical Egypt. They actually reenact a scene straight out of Indiana Jones, although I guess Johnny Quest came first. But.
Yeah, I mean, this does feel like at least part of the episode is a very Johnny Quest setting, and part of the humor of this is that everyone but Hank and Dean are semi-realistic shitbags. They all kind of suck. They're all kind of failures. But Hank and Dean are sort of the aw shucks, just pulled out of Johnny Quest's kind of attitude, where they're not made for this world. They're made to exist in that fun Hanna-Barbera world, but they're in a real world with bad people.
And they're kind of the Hardy Boys as well. They're just oh, gee, jeepers, Dad, what's this mystery? It's just that's one of my favorite things in the first season, where Dean is well, what would Giant Boy Detective do? And they're his dad didn't get killed. we got our own problems now.
And instead of being a supportive father, Dr. Venture is just sort of over it. He's
the
all
most,
this
selfish monster.
Yeah.
Well, he's supposed to be. He's Johnny Quest grown up.
Yeah, that's true.
How screwed up would a kid who got taking on these adventures, which is mostly just death-defying Amazon, river snake, whatever situations.
Constantly being held captive and his life threatened.
That is true. At best, he is just inconvenienced by all of these adventures. He just wants it all to be over with and wants people to leave him alone. But I love James Urbaniak. This is where I discovered him, and he's been popping up everywhere since the Venture Brothers. Maybe I just missed him before, but his voice is great.
Yeah, he's so great in everything, and also that he is. If you want to see him in a great live action thing, he is Julie Klausner's boyfriend on the show Difficult People, and he's so funny as the perfect boyfriend to her very selfish life. It's really great.
But the creators of the show, I believe Doc Hammer is technically creator, but only Jackson Publick is listed as the creator. But both of them, on record, which they eventually regretted saying, this is a show about failure. But by the time season 5 came around, they're you know what? We're kind of sick of seeing our characters fail. We want them to succeed at things. So I think they sort of reworked that a bit, where it's just this is getting depressing. I want to write about people not failing for once.
Well, there's also the thing about you saw that it actually showed up in interviews, but also through the fan community. It's about failure. It's about failure, and that was the big deep thing. And okay, guys, it's about more than that. It's not just that. It's a part of it, but there's more there than
it's
just
sort
that.
of like when you hear Die Hard's a Christmas movie. I don't care. There's more to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think too, what's rings true to the show is that Publick and Hammer. They are the characters in the show. Every loser on the show who knows too much information about something or has a dumb conversation about a piece of media, that's them. All they do is it feels like they have those conversations with each other all the time, and it comes through those characters.
That's true. At a certain point, every character is as pop culture savvy as the creators, and they know all these deep nerdy references, which is you can complain about that, but I think it's kind of fun that everyone is just in the world as a loser who knows about all these things, like the viewers.
They've said that when they get stuck sometimes writing, they'll just create another pair of characters that are just them.
Yeah.
So there's Henchman 21, 24, Pete White, and Billy Quizboy.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just them over and over again because they just we need to throw something in here.
Too, just a
Warden
duos talking to each other.
Yeah, it's just them.
Saying why'd you say that? Even in this episode, there's those two henchmen who just go well, I know, and it's voiced by the two of them having another conversation.
I mean, we'll get more into it, but these guys are so instrumental to all of the shows. Not only do they write the shows and do art for the shows, they also do a lot of voices and sometimes even music. So I feel like one of the reasons why the show is so slow to produce, not just because of Adult Swim being slow to pick it up, is that these two guys have to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And they're getting older now, so it must be a lot harder when you're 50 to be okay, you're directing this episode, but you're also writing it, and you're also voicing half the characters. And could you write some music for it too?
Yeah, there's a real South Park quality. That's the more famous one of the two creators do everything kind of show. They do everything on the show. That's why I do feel bad complaining sometimes about the long wait, because I'm I know they have to write every episode and do almost every part of it. They do that 95% of the work on it, basically.
It's true, yeah. So let's get into the creators of the show. The first one, Jackson Publick, is his non-union name, but we know him best as Christopher McCullough.
How dare he break union lines?
Yes, and become successful. But here's what happened to him. He, based on his work in the self-published comic entitled Cement Shoes, SHOOZ, Ben Endland, that is the creator of The Tick, hired him to write a Tick spin-off called Karma Tornado. And because of his work on that, he was later hired for the Tick show when Fox picked up more episodes. So they go back a long ways. Yeah.
And you can see a lot of the Tick's DNA in this show, too.
Oh, for sure.
The Adventure Brothers grew far beyond Tick. Like, honestly, the superheroes are secondary to adventure in the world of the Adventure Brothers.
Yeah, very much like adding mundanity to the life of superheroes and supervillains is very Tick-like in this series. I can see that for sure.
And Ben Endland would go on to write at least one episode of the show too, the Viva de los Muertos.
Yeah, I think he ended up writing 3 total.
Oh.
so
Well,
far.
he was supposed to write Careers in Science, for example.
Okay.
But he didn't. I don't know exactly what happened, but the schedule didn't work out. And he got a story by credit, but he didn't actually write the whole episode.
Got it. So Jackson Publick came up with this idea, and he workshopped it for a while. It was originally going to be a one-off installment in a comic anthology for Monkey Suit Press. But he was like, you know what? I can do more of this. I'm going to pitch it to Comedy Central, and they turned it down in the year 2000. So you could have had a hit on your hands, Comedy Central, but you failed. After failing to pitch the show to Comedy Central, he moved to L.A. to work on the first live-action Tick series, which I didn't know until now, and that's where he met Patrick Warburton. So
Yes.
I guess the seeds were being planted then.
I was going to mention he met Doc Hammer actually while working on the first animated Tick.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I wasn't 100% clear on this, but from what I can tell, Doc Hammer and Ben Endland were roommates or something.
They go back a long way.
Yeah, and that's how the Publick and Hammer met, was through Ben Endland just knowing them both, I guess.
Well, the live action Tick show that no one remembers is so instrumental in this show. Like, that's how this Patrick Warburton you would hear in every cartoon. So at first it wasn't weird to me. They're like, well, yeah, I'm watching a cartoon. Patrick Warburton's in this. But to know he's only in it because he befriended Publick while working on the Tick show. Like, it was a favor they could call in. And that they would tell the stories about how for production, once a year they'd fly out to L.A. or a couple times a year they'd fly out to L.A. to record his lines. Otherwise, there was no getting him in the show.
Yeah, I mean, that show, so the reboot of the Tick live action, is that a whole series or just a pilot?
Oh, it's a whole show.
Okay.
It's
pretty good,
second
actually.
season now on Amazon.
Wow, I
There's
miss
too
everything.
Many
Yeah.
things. There's too many things to watch.
Amazon's interface is so bad, I miss all of their original
I
stuff.
hate their interface
Yeah, it's
so
terrible.
much.
It advertises Bosch to me a lot. I know
Yuck.
that's happening. Whatever that is, Bosch is that.
I've not seen that either.
I watched one episode of The Tick, but I was mad for probably a petty reason. That it's like, why did you change all of their names?
Yeah, that pissed me off.
That should be
too.
Deflator Mouse. That should be American made. Come on.
And it's the same in the live action show too.
God damn
But
it.
Ben Endland is still working on it a lot.
So they changed the names again for the second one?
Not all of them, but for the ones that were created for the animated series, which Endland's comic doesn't have the rights to.
I didn't know
That's
there were
why-
rights issues. Okay.
Yeah, the Deflator Mouse was created for the cartoon. I believe he was not in the comics, which
Kids love the reference to that opera, don't they?
but in Jackson Publick's episodes, as I recall, the one he wrote for the Tick was one of my favorites, the Mad Bomber, What Bombs at Midnight. Like he wrote that episode.
Okay,
of the
wow.
animated Tick.
Yeah, for the animated Tick, he was a writer and like a storyboard artist.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we should point out he's an artist too. I don't know if we've pointed that out enough yet, but yeah, he is an artist. So the Tick gets canceled. He moves back to New York and is like, Comedy Central, I've dusted off the Venture Brothers again to repitch it to you. And they're like, thanks, but no. But then he found out about Adult Swim, which apparently he didn't know about. It's like, okay, Adult Swim could be the perfect platform for the Venture Brothers. Comedy Central doesn't want it, but they are making animated programs for adults. And so in 2002, the pilot was greenlit by Adult Swim. It would eventually air in February of 2003, and then it was picked up for series, and that would start in August of 2004. And I feel extremely old.
Yeah, makes me feel
August
old.
of 2000. Like, George Bush wasn't elected a second time when this series started.
That's true. Oh, my God.
We were in the first. John Kerry was campaigning. That's when this premiered.
Oh boy, yes, I feel so old. But yeah, so he voices many characters: Hank Venture, the Monarch, Sergeant Hatred, Pete White, Henchman 24, and a lot of other voices. If there's a guy on the show with a Midwestern twang in his voice, it is Jackson Publick.
And then meanwhile, if they sound like a dork, they're probably Doc Hammer.
Yeah, let's talk about
That's
Doc
pretty good.
Hammer. He is the most goth man on earth, and
really
maybe
is.
the oldest
Yeah.
living goth, true goth at this point.
He gets mocked very heavily by
Yeah.
Stamatopoulos at a Comic-Con once.
Gosh.
It wasn't very nice.
In fact, he's so goth, his hair naturally grows in black and blonde because of like some sort of pigment disorder.
Whoa.
So he was born a goth.
Wow. Everybody thinks he's a phony of like, oh, you real stupid way to dye your hair, but that's his real hair.
Let me tell you about how goth he is. Before the Venture Brothers, he performed in goth bands with his former wife, Lisa Hammer, from 1985 to 2002. So he was playing in goth bands for like 20 years.
Wow.
Like 3 different goth
And
bands.
Lisa, who has a voice on the show as well.
Yeah, she
In
plays
this episode
Triana
even.
for a while. I think she eventually stops. Maybe that's after they broke up. I know Triana had 2 voices.
She voices her after she was.
Yeah, after the
okay.
divorce, she's.
I don't know if she ever stopped, but
The divorce happens before the show is airing, so
okay.
Yeah, I
she's
think so.
doing it as. So it seems like an amicable divorce.
Yeah, I guess.
Hopefully. But yes, it's hard to tell like where he came from because he didn't do a lot of TV stuff before. I mean, he was friends with Jackson Publick, obviously, and roommates with him, but he mostly worked on independent movies that his wife was making, like independent horror movies and stuff like that.
Weird.
So he was just this weird artist who sort of found like a guy who was like maybe more savvy about pitching TV shows and making TV shows, and he's talented in his own right. He does a lot of art for the show and some music, and he voices Dr. Girlfriend, Billy Quizboy, Henchman 21. He's the non-Ray Romano guy. So yes, some of his voices sound the same. The guys talk like this.
My favorite line I think he's ever said is when it's one of their many arguments about media, and it's about Smurfs, and they're saying how
Yeah.
Smurfs must produce by eggs, and it's just one guy. He goes, he has a fucking beard. They're mammals.
mammals don't lay eggs.
I got a huge chuckle out of what something Billy Quizboy said. Is like, you hold that gun like a guy who plays Rivet.
That line. As I am an ex-games journalist, and I had to look that one up.
You didn't know Riven's a sequel to Miss?
I had forgotten.
Fake gamer girl
You
over here.
fried, Henry. You
I
fried.
am.
But yes, also music by J.G. Thirlwell, which I believe Jackson Publick was listening to a lot of his music at the time he was thinking of the show. And his music is very eclectic. I think it's like trip hop and industrial, post-punk sort of stuff. And it also draws upon like older sounding, like sort of cocktail loungy music as well. So
It's a very like lived in 60s kind of feel, which that's a lot of the aesthetic of the show. It's like, well, what if the 60s continued, but it just got mustier and older and boring?
I guess part of the initial idea was like, what if all of the dreams of the space age failed? Like you're just seeing like the museum of what could have been. But that's what they live in. It's like this futuristic house, but everywhere around them is just trash.
Like it wasn't replaced by anything else.
Yeah.
It just didn't go anywhere.
I mean, that's Dr. Vector's whole life because doesn't show up in this episode that much. But his dad was the famous, awesome, best at everything super scientist of the '60s who created all these things successfully, and then he left it all to his fail son who can't do anything right.
Yeah. It's fun in the show to realize as you watch it, like, this doctor doesn't invent anything. Like, he never makes anything. It's all just like, well, my dad made this. Like, well, yeah. Eventually, characters start telling him, like, I know your dad made that. What, did you make something? Like,
It's a really good but kind of humiliating moment in one of the episodes, not this episode, but a different episode, where like an army general comes up and goes, "Look, I know your dad made this stuff, so like, we saw it 30 years ago. I don't need to see it again."
well, he says, but thanks for the Fruitopia. Man, I haven't
Yeah,
seen those
exactly.
in a long time.
we haven't gotten to this. I think this is not in this episode, but we find out that Dr. Venture has basically an honorary doctorate from Tijuana, so he's barely a doctor.
Yeah.
There are lots of doctors in this show, but he's barely one of them.
But yeah, Hammer and Publick work great together. They're so funny on the commentaries.
Oh,
Even
the commentaries are great.
the
Yeah.
DVDs are worth getting and Blu-rays now are worth getting just for the commentaries, to hear them tell stories. They basically never talk about the episode either. They just are like, hey, remember that episode of The Bionic Man? Yeah, The $1 Million Man? And then you can also hear them lighting cigarettes.
Yeah.
Yep, that's also true.
Yeah, like I tried to do research for this episode, so I listened to the commentary. And it's actually pretty good about this one, but yeah, you listen to other commentaries, they just like, especially when Urbaniak comes on, they just shoot the shit
Yeah,
for 22 minutes.
It's fun to hear them goofing around in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really funny. I love that they put the work into like making commentaries and describing things. Like, they were very invested in their fans. I think too they did like a live viewing party, a live stream of them watching the episode one of the premiere years.
I think I might have
one of the
seen that.
finales.
I do remember that when the first DVD came out, they couldn't fit the last commentary on the disc, so one of them just hosted it on their live journal, and I downloaded that. It's still in my iTunes. It's the commentary for the last episode. So they were very, very concerned with getting all the commentaries out. So yes, great creators.
They work hard on bonus features for their DVDs too, and so it's why it's hard to be mad at them that they don't produce stuff very quickly. It's like, well, they're clearly working hard. I don't think they're lazy.
I definitely think they're lazy. But they do have a very low budget. There's a famous, or I guess infamous, story on the first episode of the season 2 commentary where they were trying to license a song. Do you remember the name of the song?
Oh yeah. It's is it the first episode of season 2?
Yeah. And
it's like when Dr. Venture's at that that club, at a rave or whatever.
Yes, everybody's free.
Yeah, that's the song. Well, so they play a voicemail from their producer or something, and they're saying like, this would cost a fourth of the entire season to license the song, so we're not going to do this. And then I guess he wrote music to the song, to the scene. It was so bad, like, okay, fine, we'll license the song.
That's one way to do it.
It's a fourth of your season's budget. We'll do it.
That is also an amazing special effect in the show. The rare times they have licensed music, this matters. Like in the prom episode, when a Pulp song comes on, which is a deep cut of a Pulp song too, so it's not even a famous one, so a cheaper one. When it comes on, you're like, this scene must really matter because they spent that money on it.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
each time they license a song, you can just think that's a fourth of the budget right there. The entire series. Not the episode, the entire series.
I hope they got more money. Jesus.
Well, they joke on one commentary that they say like, well, do we make money off this? And they make a joke of like, we make dad money.
That's right.
We make a money that you as a kid would be like, well, that's a dad. Dad should make that much.
I think Brendan Small, like one of the great home movie commentaries, is just like, I make Adult Swim money. I live in an apartment complex where everyone has a show on Adult Swim.
They make a joke about like, oh, so what do? You like everyone in this building has a cartoon. He also tells a story on there that he had just sold Death Clock when they were recording, or Metalocalypse, and he's recording a commentary. He's like, I sold a show, so I bought a computer to make the show, and my bank called me like, somebody stole your thing. Like you could not afford this. You would not buy this. You're too poor.
He was publicly embarrassed.
Last production thing I'd say, that friend of the show, Ian Jones-Quartey, also worked on the first 4 years of the series.
You're right.
Out of New York, especially for seasons 3 and 4. He was the supervising animator for the whole series. He left after 4 to go out to LA and work more in the animation there, which he now was the co-executive producer of Steven Universe for the first 4 seasons of that. Now the creator and executive producer of OKKO. I heard him tell a story once about what was your favorite thing to draw on Venture Brothers, and he said it was Doc Venture, because his favorite thing to draw was if Doc Venture saw someone in front of him having a conversation that wasn't about him, he just shuts down. He's like, like it's so great. So look for that, folks.
I was going to mention also in this episode's commentary, actually, they mentioned it at one point, but they talk about the frustration of like if a line screws up or if an animation thing screws up, they can't send it back. They can't re-record it. They have no budget for any of that. There's one scene where like a mummy's head falls off. He goes, I hate how that looks, but like we couldn't afford to send it back.
They see all the mistakes that we don't really see. So it's tough for them to watch these things again. Hey everybody, it's Bob. Who else is here with me?
Hey, it's Henry. Hi.
And we usually do these by ourselves, but I can't because there's been constant construction directly underneath my apartment for the past 2.5 months. So yes, by the time you're listening to this, I'll be in the air headed to Japan. So please tweet at me at Bob Servo and tell me hello from America, because I might not come back. I'm kidding. I'm kidding, Henry. But usually we tell you what's going on with the network and these little breaks on the free feed. So what's happening next week? What's next week's episode going to be?
Oh man, next week's episode is Samurai Jack, the Princess and the Bounty Hunters.
I like it.
A real classic. Another pick from this week's guest.
Yeah, he's great. Dave Whittington.
Is a great guy, yes.
And if you go to the Patreon, go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. You can hear that right now.
It's
available now That's the benefit of being a $5 patron. You get What a Cartoon a week ahead of time ad-free, and Talking Simpsons a week ahead of time and ad-free, and a ton of other stuff on top of that. If you want to be a free person, that's fine. We don't look down upon you, but even giving us $1 a month will really help the network, and we'll do more stuff with that money. We have new goals that we have up on the Patreon, including a new mini-series, a monthly movie podcast, and perhaps a third mini-series in 2018. You heard my voice squeak. I'm like, that's a lot of work.
You're just thinking about it when you said that out loud, like, and
that's a squeak of excitement.
And also, if you're a fan of Venture Brothers like me and other Adult Swim shows, what about Futurama? I bet you like Futurama, don't you?
Yep, and we just did the entire season, first season of Futurama with the Talking Simpsons treatment. It'll be wrapping up at the end of May, probably. Yeah. But if you give now, you'll have like 10 episodes to listen to that you probably haven't heard if you're on the free feed. So yeah, give that a check it out at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. We've got all kinds of great stuff coming up. We have interviews planned that are Patreon exclusives with huge Simpsons people. We've done so many. Our most recent one is with David Silverman, and man, that might be my favorite interview. Not to slag on anyone else we interview, but David just brought it. In fact, he asked us to ask him certain questions, like ask me this question, because he had great stories to tell. It was so amazing.
So many great stories. He's tons of fun, and I also love when a Simpsons creator like him uses Simpsons quotes just earnestly, like, I don't know.
I'm using that a lot now, thanks to David Silverman. It's not, I mean, I used it before, but now it's constantly in my vocabulary. So thank you, David. But we'll let you get back to the cartoon, the What a Cartoon show. But remember, go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. At least check it out. There's a lot we're offering for $5 a month. And if you're a new patron, we've done so much in the past year. You will have like weeks of podcasts, perhaps even months of podcasts to catch up on it. And if you're a podcast fan, that is a good proposition, I think.
Quite a lot for $5. Oh, and if you're a free listener and you want to help us but you don't have the money, if you're an iTunes subscriber, maybe give us a review on iTunes. That always helps with visibility on the show, too.
Yeah, I'd love more people to get to listen to our show. And, I mean, we're just starting out, but I think we're the only people maybe doing this with this approach. So, yeah, like just spread the word. Tell your friends, and we'd really appreciate it. But, yes, please enjoy the rest of this episode. So getting into the episode, this episode begins, first of all, there is no escape to the House of Mummies Part 1. But it begins with a previously on segment.
Last week on The Venture Brothers, Part 1 of Escape to the House of Mummies.
Created by Tim, the self-created. Hatched by the same egg from which emerged Ra. Behold the perfect man. Praise he who will reign over all.
That's very impressive. It looks like he hates his foot.
Oh, still? I've been doing that all day.
You boys have to get Caligula and Dr. Freud back to the time machine. Don't let him ask about me.
Will do.
Wait. Where's the hand of Osiris?
I told the Caligula guy to hide it.
Oh, dear Lord. No, just drop it there. I'll get it later.
So it's previously on an episode that never existed. I really love the title. If you look at it again, it's Escape to. You never escape to something. You escape from something. And the phrase "House of Mummies," the House of Mummies, is that a pyramid?
Yeah, it sounds like a child's idea of a pyramid. Like that's where all the mummies live.
Oh, that's perfect.
It's very much like the Paul F. Tompkins style King's hat.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I am already hearing jokes again. I missed that when I completely misventure Doc saying, don't answer any questions if he asks about me. It's just like he knows Freud would find a lot of daddy issues with that.
And again,
he doesn't want that.
I love the varied Midwestern Egyptian.
Oh, yes. And I also love that the way it's kind of a cheap joke of Caligula put it up his butt, but I love the clinical way Freud is looking at him, big around at his butt. He's like, I see.
So other flashbacks there's like 4 flashbacks in this. I caught the first 2. They're escaping on the Perfect Man, which is a giant Egyptian, and Brock has to kill him. He's like, no, he's Abomination. Kill him, Brock.
Like, oh yeah. I think it's Dean is writing him, or maybe it's Hank. I forget which one.
No, it's Hank.
It's Hank is writing him. And they're like, oh, can't we keep him, please? We'll feed him and everything. It's like, no, you're Abomination.
It's one of 2 times that Hank is writing something he shouldn't be in this episode.
He loves doing it. And there's also, I believe they say on the commentary, it's a Johnny Quest reference of saying, you ignorant savages.
Yeah.
It's something that race legitimately calls non-white people in the jungle.
Yeah, I used to watch Johnny Quest as a kid a little bit, and there's a lot of like when they go to foreign countries, they're all savages to them. Like that's. I
mean, it was the '60s. That's what they felt.
Yeah. So Dr. Ventura is riding on Brock's shoulders, pretending to be a giant human, and he's just waving a flashlight around. But the Egyptians are like, it's just a flashlight.
Get him.
Yeah. And then we have Dr. Venture. The Egyptian says to him, "Give me the hand of Osiris." Dr. Venture says, "Give me head," and he's like, "You're not taking this seriously. I'm about to kill your children." He's like, "Join the club."
Yeah, you did not just say that.
Yeah.
At this point in the show, it has been revealed that Dean and Hank are clones and can die anytime, and he'll just bring it back.
Yes,
so he doesn't care. I think also it is a perfect Venture Brothers gag of the henchman shooting all his bullets,
that's
throwing the gun, and the other guy saying, "Why'd you do that? I have more bullets." He's like, "I know, it just looked cool. Well, pick it up." It is a singular deconstruction of a trope you have seen a million times in a million different shows, and it's just so perfect.
It's also stopping like fun adventure action to have an awkward conversation, which is great too.
Well, that is prototypical Venture Brothers, like with both the throwing the gun scene and like the guy about to execute his kids thing. Because where they tries to scare them like, I'm your four-armed god.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like that's a trope that happens all the time in actual media, and then they're like, yeah, it's just a flashlight. Why would it be fooled by something stupid like that? Like you kind of expect that to like, oh, of course they think they're ignorant savages. But.
Or same with like throwing a gun. No, don't throw your gun.
I have more bullets, It
won't even do anything.
You need that gun. So
it takes it into the real world, like Bob was saying earlier.
Yeah, I love that. I love bringing in the mundanity or questioning these tropes, like as we pointed out. Like, why would you do that? But so they're in the Hall of Sorrows, and it's not very impressive.
Is anybody else not impressed by the Hall of Sorrows?
Yeah, looks more like a basement than a hall.
Well, can you fit through there?
I can't fit my shoulders in. I bet you could fit.
Great! Way to be useless, Dean. When I was your age, all I did was crawl through holes. Holes half that size, mind you. If you want a job done right, I have to do it. Boy adventurers, what do you need? A roadmap? It's simple. Don't get chopped by the Yeti, stumble on the robot factory, pull up a couple of rubber masks, and crawl through holes. Is that sound what I think it is?
Oh, yeah. These guys are playing it by the book. We need to come up with a plan fast.
I have an idea. You should call Dr. O. He's magic.
That is the 5th time you've suggested that stupid idea. We're not possessed. We're trapped. I'm going to go back in that hole. I think better at holes.
Yes, this is very much setting up the science versus magic thing. But I really love in this and throughout the series, like Dr. Venture, he hates adventures. It's just a bunch of bullshit he's been through. It's like, okay, this is what we have to do. It's so easy. You guys are so stupid. Even Brock is like, oh, they're doing this thing again. Yeah. And then when he actually calls Dr. Orpheus, he's like, we're trapped in a cliche.
He's so mad that he has to. It's a great gag, too, that Brock is like, well, look, I agree. This is dumb. It could kill us, though. Like this, so we're laughing at it, but there's real danger here.
Well, they're also. I'm not sure if you have a clip of this part right after it, where Brock goes. Well, Hank has the. I know it sounds insane, but Hank has the only idea. Hank is an idiot, but like we don't have any other ideas here, right?
And also the idea that Rusty is giving Dean the speech that the typical speech a father gives you, like, I had to go there and twice as far and in snow. Yeah. But instead he's like half this size, mind you. But okay, so also as a comic book nerd, I love this episode so much, and it starts right here. Doctor Strange is Dr. Orpheus. They're just the same guy. 100%. This is long before Doctor Strange was a famous household name who starred in a movie. I wouldn't even say he's that famous.
That's a weird thing to think about now, though, because I remember when this came out, like, well, it's Doctor Strange, but only a nerd, knows that.
Yeah. I didn't know it. I didn't know it, and I was a nerd, but I love Dr. Orpheus because he that talks like this, or talks like this!
Which for
Full
me,
ham.
That's always how I thought Doctor Strange's voice should be, because he explains things all the time. But it's not just that Doctor Strange is awesome, but this plot point here is what bad writers in Marvel Comics do, and it's their commentary on it. This is a prototypical, let's say, Fantastic Four story. They have hit a wall, or a Spider-Man story. Spider-Man is facing a magic guy. He's kind of hit a wall, and he's like, I don't know what to do with this magic guy. I can't web him. This really isn't my forte. And eventually it does come down to call Doctor Strange. He's magic. And then you have a 2-page scene where Doctor Strange is like, oh, here's a magic whatchamacallit, and it'll save the day. He does that all the time. It's just such an easy go-to of writers of like, he's magic. Just call him.
I didn't realize that when they were playing on that trope. That's amazing. Like I don't know a lot of the comic stuff that they draw upon. I don't really know a lot about. So I'm glad Henry's here to point that out because again, I'm just like only getting into the Johnny Quest stuff that I'm understanding.
It's such a great commentary on the comics, but that's also what I love about Venture Brothers too. Like I'm sure there's multiple times they've deconstructed a bad plot they've seen in a movie I haven't seen or a TV show I haven't seen, like $6 Million Man. I've never watched that show. I didn't watch the episode where he fights a Yeti, but they do that, or fights Bigfoot, but that was a whole episode of the show, and it worked as a show on its own. But that's in general how Doctor Strange keeps working, or Dr. Orpheus keeps working on the show, where they're just like, again with this magic, who fucking cares? Like, this is science.
Yeah, he calls it fake impossible magic when he eventually calls Dr. Orpheus. And I love, again, Dr. Venture is so over it. He's describing his imminent death. He's like, these walls are slower than haunted house spike walls, but not quite as slow as evil scientist spike walls.
I was asking, is that a reference to anything, or is that just like
I think it's just like just a joke where this is where you would see these spiked walls, and they've been through so many adventures that he just like, I fucking know how this works. Just get me out of it.
Yeah. I was worried I was missing some like, well, this from this movie and this scientist movie. Or
I mean, it could be like, but the spiked walls are in everything.
Yeah.
It's such a cliche that even. I've seen cartoons before this where they'd make a joke on the spike wall cliche and just kind of stop there. And this is a joke on the cliche being tired. They're like, this is so cliche, we can't even really comment on it. It's just boring.
But this does kind of continue in the first episode of season 2. They actually do have another science versus magic discussion of sorts. Although in that case, they were talking about reviving the boys as clones.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is a soul? What is this?
And he's like, no, it's just neutrons and synaptics firing or whatever.
Yeah. Before Thor, the first Thor movie really popularized, like, what you call science, we call magic. That's basically what they did multiple times on this show with Orpheus versus Rusty scenes.
So here is Dr. Orpheus's plan.
Dean, can you hear me?
Yes!
Dean, picture my daughter naked. Think of her as yours.
Look, you lunatic, stop worrying about inheriting my estate and get us out of here.
Venture family, you must trust me. Dean, think only of my daughter kissing you on the mouth. Oh. Think harder, boy. She's using her tongue. There! I have located you.
Jeez, didn't expect that.
All right, I'm getting out of here before Dean wakes up crying. I'll be back soon with expensive crap to get you all out of here.
Yes, so that's great. I mean, I love, whenever Dr. Orpheus launches into his big, like, theatrical, flamboyant speeches, there's always this, like, incredibly bombastic music playing behind him that I love.
Yeah,
it only heightens it, yeah.
There's in the commentary, actually, Doc Hammer, who wrote this episode, he mentions that he actually wanted that to drag out longer and make it sound like he was really trying to sell his daughter to Dr. Adventure. But I guess it was cut for time, probably.
And that's Stephen Rattazzi as Orpheus, and he's like a friend of in the theater community with Urbaniac, I believe, is how they got him. But he is so perfect.
He's great, yeah.
And it's such a great find of, like, again, it's not cartoon voices you get on this show. And Rattazzi, I just heard him recently in Ian Jones Quarty's OKKO. He is a one-off character he is the boss at the Frame Shop. These two characters I really like, Brandon and Real Magical Skeleton. They work at a framing store, and their boss is a painting who speaks in that same voice because he's an oldie time painting.
That's great. I love Dr. Orpheus's voice. But yes, Dr. Venture escapes, and then Brock punches out a henchman after he sneezes in his own helmet, and then they escape too.
that's a great feel of the reality. It feels like another joke on the show of a guy who stared too much at an action figure and like, what happens if this guy sneezes in this dumb mask? And
I like how it's like, wait, and then he sneezes like, ah.
Yeah.
Wait, is that after the scene where the henchman screws up the oil?
Yes.
Yeah, oil and
I love that joke because it's so dumb and it makes no sense, but it's great.
He heated up voile, which apparently is soft sheer fabric.
Yeah, there's believers these days. Just get out of here. I don't want to look at you.
And that's what sells so many jokes on Venture Brothers so well too, like the hyper specificity. The way he describes what the inside of his helmet smells like after he sneezes is like, oh, I can smell it.
There's
like,
another
yuck.
description of a smell in this, which is also very good later in this episode.
Yes, that is.
So Dr. Venture's back at home and not very concerned about everyone he left behind, and he just
He's really taking his time.
Yeah.
I was going to ask real quick, how much reference explaining do we want to do? Because there's a lot of it, of course. But did we want to talk about like the Egyptian mythology parts? Here?
Yeah, we can. I mean, what do you have to drop
I don't
on
want to
us?
bore people with like Egyptian mythology lecture 101 or something. So I'll just say real quick. Apparently they actually did base it off real. Or at least their design's off real thing. The priest, the dude who gets knocked out, he's designed to look like Thoth, the god of knowledge.
Okay.
At the beginning, they mention in the subtitles they spell it Tim. I don't think it's Tim. It's supposed to be Tem, who actually was the god who appeared or existed before anything else. And he actually did self-create. And then later merged with Raw, apparently. This is like Wikipedia level research, so don't take this as like as a doctorate or anything. But
I'm impressed they actually went to the effort to do this.
It seems like, or you could just maybe it's just so similar you could just match it to anything.
Yeah. But in passing, Dr. Venture mentions the cult of Osiris.
I love this scene so much.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just love it.
It's okay, and Dr. Orpheus has a few words to say about that.
You're safe. I am pleased that I could help.
Help Schmelp. Brock and the boys are still trapped, probably dead by now.
We must help them!
No doubt. I have a 0-point magnet somewhere around here that'll take those pyramid walls down in a jiff, so thanks for nothing.
Pyramid?
Yeah, we were trapped in a pyramid. Some stupid cult made a time machine.
What pyramid cult?
I don't know. Papyrus, Osiris, something like that. Never heard of him?
Osiris cult? Osiris? Firstborn son of the womb of Nut, begotten of Keb, the lord of Akert, whose existence is for everlasting. Yes, I've heard of him. Do you even know what I do for a living?
It's great. Yes, I love. We must save them.
Yeah, it's a joke later on in the episode that Rusty completely forgets, but also Orpheus forgets too. He's the nicer of the two, but he also completely forgets they're in danger.
It is kind of incredible that they forget in like 10 seconds. Like, we want to save them. It's like, oh yeah, you think you're better than me? Like, it's
but Orpheus's speech again. I think of it as a comic book dork. This is Doctor Strange finding out he was left out of a team up comic that is perfectly suited for him. He's like, this is a team up I should have been on. You should have called me. This is magic. You're fighting magic.
And now they're in direct competition with each other.
Tricks! How dare you! With just a thought I could rise into the air!
Or you could put on these anti-gravity boots.
I could incinerate this entire lab! Make you believe that you are a very special episode of Blossom! And shoot lightning from my hands!
Ooh, laser ray, mind control helmet, Tesla coil. Anything else? Anytime, any place. You name the contest.
We shall celebrate your inflated sense of self with the ultimate contest. Shrinking!
I don't know why the ultimate contest is shrinking, but I like that's the first thing he goes to. So Rusty forgets about Brock and Hank and Dean and now is like, I must show him that science will beat magic with me building the better shrinker.
Well, he feels very threatened by Orpheus, is I think like a father. Well, he feels threatened by most people.
Yeah, really. It's almost everyone in the
And
world.
he's always trying to let Orpheus know he's beneath him. He's like, well, I'm your landlord. I'm not your friend.
Yeah, actually, does he say that when he calls him?
Yeah.
It's your landlord.
Yeah, that's what he calls himself.
And same other people like, well, this guy's your friend. He mows your lawn. Like, that's what people say. And Science versus Magic is a great concept for an episode, but it's also great because these two are both such losers that neither can win.
Yeah.
They're just such sad
Well,
losers.
there's a pretty direct metaphor that they both, you could say they both win or lose, I guess, because they're both the smallest man.
Yeah,
that's true.
Metaphorically.
The smallest man will be the biggest man. That's what they say. In many ways. So, yes, we cut back to Egypt, wherever they are, and they're trying to escape, and Brock, again, this is what he says about the entire situation.
This is getting stupid.
They befriend a mummy named Mummy Muggy, and his head falls off.
Muggy. I love that line because when he says this is getting stupid, I see it again as characters that know they're in adventures and cartoons, and that Brock is like, I'm in a cool, fun cartoon that's grown up, and you're forcing me into these Scooby-Doo fucking shenanigans with a mummy muggy.
Brock just wants to kill people.
He's like, I'm trying to kill people, and you're making me spend time with a stupid mummy.
I love Patrick Warburton's performance as Brock, actually, because it strikes me as a difficult thing to do, to act, but also act disinterested, because that's a big part of his character, is that he doesn't really get that involved in the shenanigans that much. He doesn't like to be, like you say, doesn't like to be involved in these stupid Johnny Questine adventures.
Yeah. And even though he only does one voice, his voice, I feel like this is a different take on his normal performance.
Yeah.
It's a little more Heston-y, maybe. I don't know.
Definitely the intensity is turned up from characters like, say, he's more intense than Krunk, which I love the character of Krunk in
Emperor's New Groove.
Yes.
Well, there's a tweet I saw that was advice to aspiring voice actors, and they mentioned that, too many voice actors focus on doing a variety of voices instead of being able to act with your voice. And they pulled out 2 examples who are in this episode, Patrick Warburton and H. John Benjamin.
Oh, yeah.
As actors who don't do different voices that much, but they're really good actors with their voice.
Well, especially H. John Benjamin. He's just himself and everything.
Yeah.
Well, it's a more old school way of thinking. Like guys, legends of voice acting like Billy West and Maurice LaMarche, they got all those jobs or Peter Cullen or Frank Welker. All those jobs because you hire them and you have 17 voices on your show and you don't have to hire other people. Now they can expand the cast a bit better. They have more money for that. So you can have more specialized voices. This is a big point Matt J has talked, our frequent guest, Matt Mither-Masters J has talked about a lot. Yeah,
and I think a lot of those early voice actor guys, by early I mean like 80s and 90s, they got their jobs by doing impressions too. Like a lot of cartoon voices, especially back then, were just impressions of famous actors or whatever. So,
and I love Dean is Dean played by Michael Sinter Nicholas.
Yeah, he's a real kind of like outcast almost in the sense because he's not connected to them in any way. He's just a voice actor. As far as I can tell, he's a good voice actor. He's just a professional voice actor.
He ended up with a job because he owned the studio they were recording in.
I didn't realize that. Wow.
That's why he records and stuff more often. But it's also what I loved about him too is that Dean is and Michael is a perfect like Spider-Man Peter Parker voice, and he would play Peter Parker at least once.
Really?
In the show.
Okay.
One of my favorite characters of later seasons of Venture Brothers is Brown Recluse, the Spider-Man character, voiced, of course, by Nathan Fillion, which is perfect casting.
That's awesome. So Dr. Orpheus's shrinking experiments fail. He ends up shrinking the table in the book he's reading from. And
he's being very nice and offers it up as dollhouse furniture to his daughter. No use crying over spilled magic.
Your Meemaw got you.
Meemaw.
Yes.
Funny to hear Dr. Strange say Meemaw.
And it turns out that Dr. Venture did have a shrink ray, but he sold it in a garage sale, and he's off to break into the trailer that has it.
Yes, I was in the yard sale episode.
Well,
except continuity.
Henry's going. You want to take this one?
You're the guest.
Yeah. So in Tag Sale, they try to buy it, and then Billy Quizboy and Pete White argue about it. And Dr. Venture gets annoyed and just, fine, no one gets the shrink ray. But I guess he might have sold it to him later.
At some point off screen, he sold it there. I could definitely see Rusty being desperate enough for money that he sold it to them.
He takes it away and here's our cash. Like, okay, never mind.
Rusty would do that easily.
So Billy Quizboy and Pete White are robbed.
It's industrial espionage. You've come to steal our great ideas. You've been foiled. We have none.
What the hell, Rust? What kind of dick breaks into his friend's house?
I need that shrink ray I sold you.
Yeah, don't call us and ask for it. Just break into our home and steal it back.
I already apologized for that.
No, you didn't. Man, I almost killed you with my hand.
Enough, Billy. Everybody knows your hand doesn't shoot lasers. What's this all about, Rust?
I bet that pompous loudmouth Orpheus that I could shrink better with science than he could with magic.
Aren't you two friends? I mean, I've seen him mowing your lawn.
So you break into a trailer?
Do you have it or not?
All right, here it is.
What'd you do, drive over it?
Oh, look at me. Ask Captain Kidd over there.
It didn't work. So I thought maybe there was a treasure map or something stuck in it.
What? Don't bother. I've been over this with him like 1,000 times.
Yeah, so Billy Quizboy and Pete White are very much like Henchmen 21 and 24 in that they're losers who know a lot about pop cultures and have very naturalistic conversations with each other.
One thing they do, though, they mentioned this earlier about, I think we mentioned earlier that they just create copies of themselves, but then they have the other person voice the other actor. So like Doc Hammer is playing the Jackson Publick looking guy. Guy.
They draw themselves into the characters a lot of the time too, and that they are very much each other in the show, and they just have any kind of. They come in of saying like, no, it's not Roger Waters, it's Joe Rogan. It's like, who would ever confuse those two? And two, the like Billy Quizboy. Billy is one of my favorite characters.
He's great, yeah.
As he's one of the like most pure souls in it. He believes in other people. He's not he gets taken advantage of by everyone in his life, but he's a good person. And I also do love that he is the master of trivia, and it also means nothing for him. Like, he's a mega loser.
He has a roommate in a trailer.
Yes. And he so desperately wants to, have this be real. He wants to jump in on the adventures, and everyone else thinks he's too much of a loser to let join in, basically.
Well, I mean, we find out he is a Rusty Venture fanboy. He's a fan of Rusty Venture and Jonas Venture.
And he's desperate to be henched. He's like, this isn't arching. I should have arch. Like, no, you're not. Nobody would arch you.
Yeah, no one cares about you.
I guess his character is like what happens to fanboys when they grow up.
Yeah. But he's the best type of fanboy in that he uses his fanboyness for good. Now, like when he finally does get an arch enemy, that St. John guy who's just rich and buys all the cool memorabilia. He beats him. He's like, "You're a bad fanboy. I remember everything more."
Well, it's also worth pointing out it's jumping ahead to like season 5 there, but that guy arches him because he knows him personally. It's not like a real arch enemy. It's kind of like, it is and it isn't.
That's right. He buys his way into the guild too.
Yeah, he buys his way and says, "I want to arch this guy," and it just throws money at him.
In the world, I love that slow reveal of the only reason people have cartoon adventures in this world is because a giant supervillain organization and a giant government organization just agree like, well, you're gonna have goofy adventures. You can't really kill
it's
each
bureaucracy.
other.
Like the guild of
Calamitous Intent.
Thank you. I stumbled on that. Yeah, they're a huge bureaucracy. Like that's all they really are.
And they're just sad losers.
Yeah.
All of them are sad. Even if you see a character who you first think is, man, they're really cool. Eventually, like, no, they're a loser too.
Yeah. So in this episode, like the joke, the like high concept joke is that like all of the Hank, Dean, and Brock stuff is like they're all non sequiturs. They all rely on stuff you haven't seen before. At some point, they got access to a time machine, and Brock is strangling Edgar Allan Poe and trying to find out where the Hand of Osiris is. It's under the floorboards.
It's been his dream the entire time to put Poe in a headlock.
Yeah.
I tried like a pumpkin.
I tried to see if that was true. I'm like, is there a thing with his head being big or something? And
whenever you see like illustrations of him, he's got a big noggin.
But the thing is, there's actually a photograph of him from the very early. This is getting a little stupid nerd reference no one cares about, but there's actually it's called a daguerreotype of him, which is like the earliest photograph. So there's actually a photograph of him, and he looks. I mean, it looks accurate, but his head looks normal size. So
Weird. Maybe it grew as his alcoholism increased.
And I also shouldn't it be? I mean, I guess Under the Floorboards fits with a Poe reference of the Telltale Heart, as we all learned from The Simpsons season 6.
I wouldn't read it,
but also I was hoping for a gag. I had forgotten that it was Under the Floorboards. I was kind of hoping more for a Cask of Amontillado reference of it being behind a false wall.
It was clever enough. So up next we get a scene with Orpheus and Triana, and we find out he is a terrible father too.
I knew it! Pumpkin, what are you doing in your room? Shouldn't you be not in your room?
My whole life I've been afraid of that closet. There's always these weird lights and something that smells like a burning Band-Aid.
Brimstone. Okay, fine. Porthole to the burning nowhere. You got me.
Dad, I thought I was going crazy. I mean, I'm still afraid of the closet. Still, I wear the same thing every day because of that closet.
Well, how was I to know? Come now, Archie and his indolent companion Jughead wear the same clothes every day. I thought it was an adolescent phase of yours.
Great, my closet is the door to hell.
The necropolis. A porthole to the necropolis. It had to be on the south side of the apartment. And since you had to have a private bathroom... Oh, this is never... Sleep! And in your sleep all is forgotten.
Wow, what a dick.
Gray.
Yeah. I gotta say, as somebody who has gone through a goth girl phase, these animators have a lot of fun drawing Triana, especially when she's passed out. I'm like, there's a lot of curves, a lot of skin.
You talk about animators being horny. There's not a lot of women in this show.
That's true.
So.
And the one woman, yeah. I mean, I guess Dr. Girlfriend doesn't show much skin.
No, though
Sometimes.
Molotov Cocktease sure does.
That's true. Yeah.
But no, Triana, it's. The design of Triana is perfectly captured for the type of high school goth girl that dorks are in love with.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I had to type, and that was it.
It's not like there are, as goth ladies get older, they usually can afford like more accessories and stuff, but this is the kind of level of like what a goth high schooler can afford.
Like, I can afford bangs and lipstick. And
Why she mentioned she doesn't change her clothes because she's afraid of the closet.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
It's that same skull thing every time.
And then he thinks he's like, well, like good Archie comics. Like she doesn't read Archie.
If I can do the nerd pedantic thing, actually, Archie and Jughead don't wear the same thing every
That's
day.
actually in my notes.
Oh my God. I have to quit this podcast.
But Triana, I love so many Triana jokes in that show because I have been friends with the goth folks. I'm not a goth myself. I am the geek who hangs around goths. And I think my favorite joke about her gothness is when Pete tries to hit on her and he says, like, she's a goth, I know what to do. Hey, do you know I was the first person to play Bauhaus on my college radio station? You know what that makes me? Like $1 million. He's like, no, just cool.
That is great. Yes,
It's also creepy because he's like 40, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, isn't that kind of... There's seriously, on one of the commentaries, I think Doc Hammer says, well, you know, in France, 16. I'm like, oh, he is joking, but is he really joking?
Let's hope so. I mean, I like Triana because she is very much a normal person in this horrible cartoon world.
Yes.
Yeah, she's a great person to call bullshit on everything. Like, this is just dumb, guys. Come on.
And there was a bad thing for a while in the Venture fandom, which I was also a part of at first, of saying like, oh yeah, Dean and Triana, they should end up together. So much, it got so bad that eventually in the show they had to have H. John Benjamin even say to Triana, like, you don't want this. This guy sucks. Like, this is bad for both of you.
To tie back to this episode, but he does mention that, like, you've been here before, but I think your memory's been wiped 1 million times. Like Dr. Orpheus stumbling in, in your room with the door to the Necropolis.
When you sleep, all will be forgotten. Yes, so we cut to a montage of what looks like Pete White and Billy and Dr. Venture working on the shrink ray, but it turns out they're working on a guilty pleasure fuck list. And Billy did not understand the question.
No, give it here.
No, I was confused with the wording. I'm serious. I didn't realize what you meant by guilty pleasure.
Jeez, Billy. Oiled garbage bag? Sweat sock? Oh my God, number 3. Melon heated in a microwave.
That's very creative, Billy. I'm sure your mother is proud of you. Give me that wife.
Ha! Hilarious. Okay, let's get back to work. I think we've had enough fun here.
No. Fun is number 5, which simply states, quote, dustbuster with corner attachment.
That sounds dangerous.
I didn't understand the question.
I like them just roasting him.
That squeak on the question.
Yeah.
So good.
Again, these are all things that Billy Quizboy uses to masturbate, in case you were not following along.
Just to make it clear.
On the commentary, they say the question was, like, who would you have sex with, I guess, without wanting to tell anyone? Was his definition of guilty pleasure.
I see.
But obviously, this is more of a what than a who. But.
Yes.
He did certainly misunderstand. And I also, going back to why the thing was broken, that he thought there was a treasure map.
Yeah.
I don't blame Pete. In this universe, if something doesn't work, maybe there is a treasure map inside.
Yeah.
Who knows?
There really are no rules.
Did we skip over the scene where Dr. Venture talks about, or Dr. Venture and Pete White talk about their answers?
Oh, yes. Well, no, that was right before that.
Yeah, I described the Billy one, but yes, Bonnie Bedelia was Dr. Ventures. Who was Pete White?
I think it was Rhea Perlman.
Oh,
yeah,
you're right.
Rhea Perlman.
I love his voice.
They also mentioned Joyce DeWitt. Dr. Venture's second choice was Joyce DeWitt.
Hey,
That's right.
she was pretty smoking on Three's Company. That was my dark horse choice on Three's Company. So, Dr. Orpheus visits his dark master, H. John Benjamin.
Look, Orpheus, I know why you're here, and I chose the form of Argos to teach you a little lesson.
Don't you mean Cerberus? Correct me if I'm wrong, but Argus was Ulysses' dog. He had only one head.
See, there you go. Right there. That's what I'm talking about. You're a know-it-all, and no one likes it. Wait, hold on a second.
I only know that I know nothing.
Way to quote something I said like a year ago. But I'm serious, hold on. This other head likes to clean my genitals with his mouth. I know it sounds weird. I let him do it because it feels great. Oh, yeah. The problem is I can taste it. So, I taste my own genitals. In my mouth. It's a conundrum.
Master, what bearing does this...
Hey, will you let me enjoy this? Damn, don't you know how good this feels? Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. Your wife left you because you don't know how good this feels.
My wife left me because of the persistent advances of a younger man.
No, she left you because you spent most of your time working.
Well, yes. I was saving the world from a secret peril.
Whoop-de-doo. And your precious free time was spent like Mr. Rogers in a cape. She left you because you're a wussy.
I like how he's inferring like you didn't go down on your wife, so that's why she left
Well,
you.
the thing about the Master in this show is kind of interesting to me is that I think he's presented as like he's always right, but he's always a dick about it. Like,
he's very smug.
Like
and
it's
glib.
actually very good advice he gives out in this and future episodes, but he's also just he can't give it to you without just making you feel terrible about yourself.
I think he's also dealing with dense people. He's like, God, just get it through your head, you idiot. This is what you need to do.
I love this bit too because I was so excited to see this in the episode when we watched it because I had forgotten H. John Benjamin was in this episode. So once he got to the door, I was like, oh my God, this is the H. John Benjamin episode. Like in 2006, he wasn't still appearing in too much stuff. I mean, he'd started being on like Family Guy. The Secret was out a little bit, but now the world knows him as both Bob and Archer at the same time.
Right.
On the commentary, they mentioned they were very excited to work with him, Doc Hammer says. But he also says that, like his roles that they knew him by was Coach McGurk. Like that was the role they point to him as like, oh, this is where he's from.
He'll always be Ben Katz to me.
Me too.
But I also I want to start using that quote a lot now, more like, way to quote something I said like a year ago.
That is great. We did miss one scene, though, so we're cutting back to Hank and Brock and Dean. And apparently their time machine, Hank set it to 12:30 a.m. instead of 12:30 AD, so they're watching themselves get captured.
I love how Hank says, oh no, I'm captured too.
Yeah. That is great. So it's not supposed to make sense, but I like how it just inferred they had like ready access to a time machine and they've been using it.
They've been having like 8 episodes of adventure that we're not getting to see, and that Poe has now joined them, and he keeps getting his head stuck in things.
Yeah, that's right.
And I like how and every time they cut away, you can tell Brock is like, oh, I'm so done with this. Like, where is your dad? Like, at least one of them goes, where is your father? Like,
where is he?
Where is he? Because like, one of these things about that is we talked about this being Johnny Quest inspired, but they don't actually do that many Johnny Quest adventures up to this point. There aren't that many like that. This is actually a rare episode where they actually show. Usually they reference like, oh yeah, remember that ghost pirate thing we did? But not the actual episode.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, but here they're like, yeah, this is the actual Johnny Questian adventure.
Well, the joke, that's in so many episodes, like say the testicular torsion episode.
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's very Johnny Quest.
They all take you to what would be, they could like begin with a scene from an action show, and then they're like, no, pause, okay, we got to do something else.
Yeah.
And so they deal with that, and this I think is similar to, there's a cool show called The Venture Brothers that you don't get to see. You get to see the sad stuff in between those moments. Eventually, though, they just get so into the action that it just happens at the same time.
Yeah.
But in this episode, it's all about denying you it, and it's really just sad people drawing on things or looking at stuff or shrinking stuff.
The Dr. Venture, Dr. Orpheus thing is very Venture Brothers. That's what a lot of episodes are like that. There's kind of goofy, sent with a bit of supernatural. But yeah, the pyramid parts are just, you don't see that as much until later seasons anyway.
Yes, yeah.
I think it's funny that you're screwed out of all this exciting action for 2 old men bickering at each other. two middle-aged men bickering at each other.
Brothers.
Yeah. So they successfully shrink Helper, the robot, and now they need to find a human subject, and they decide upon Billy.
Go look at me. I have not lived enough, for I have never tasted the flower of a woman.
What do you mean?
Yeah, tasted a flower? Is that a direct metaphor?
Because I don't take many trips down south myself.
You guys are disgusting. No, I mean, I haven't sampled the fruits of the fairer sex.
What's with the poetry, Wordsworth? Just say it. Say, I am a virgin.
I know it.
Billy, that makes you the best candidate to take a ray blast. You have nothing to lose. You've never done anything. The way I look at it, it's not even murder. It's a very late abortion.
Wait, give me 24 hours to experience love. Let me know the gentle caress of a woman. Let me sleep in the shade of love's bough. I will return to you. I will return knowing the sweet taste.
I vote Billy.
Seconded. All right, virgin, get on the target.
That's great. Yes.
More
roasting of poor Billy.
They follow up on that virgin stuff a lot. I believe he gets laid eventually.
I think so.
Show.
Well, there's an episode where he gets he thinks he's being kidnapped for one final thing and get killed. So he gets what he thinks are vampires, but actually just prostitutes dressed as vampires.
Oh yes, yeah.
and then I guess he has sex there. I would say
he operates on that
the giant dude,
the giant Monstroso. That's right, man. All these episodes are coming back, even though I haven't watched them in a fucking decade. Because the show takes too long.
Upon watching all of this, I was immediately all the memories came flooding back. I have not watched an episode of this in like 8 years because I fell off at the end of season 4. I'm like, oh no, I remember everything now.
Yeah, and though Pete Pete, like Dr. O, doesn't go down on the ladies too much.
I don't take many trips down south.
That's selfish. No, if you subscribe to the idea within the show that Pete might be in the closet, then that's not a shock that he doesn't go down on ladies too much.
That is true.
That's he's called a closet case by multiple of the openly gay characters on the show.
I think he isn't, though. I think he
think
denies
so.
it. But I mean, I think he just is, metrosexual kind of falling out of vogue these days, but that's kind of what he is.
It's the defense of the effeminate man who is not gay.
That's a better
just
way
like,
to put
no,
it.
I'm an effeminate man. I'm not. I like women though.
There are dozens of us. Dozens.
Exactly.
Though I also think it's pretty mean of Rusty and Pete to be making fun of him because while they are not virgins, they have had sex maybe 8 times ever.
They're not exactly sex mad. It's a recurring plot point that Dr. Venture only had sex like for the first time when he was 24 or something like.
With
nothing to be ashamed of, but like, hey, you're not, you can't make fun. Don't throw stones.
Yeah, I mean, it's only because like they found someone lower in the pecking order to attack,
exactly
and that's the only reason they found someone who's a bigger loser than them.
Yep,
I knew it. We get another scene with Dr. Orpheus and his Dark Master, and basically just more like you're an idiot, you're stupid, you let your daughter party all night, you let Dr. Venture push you around. That's why no one has respect for you. It's just like all these things. It's like when you have to stop being nice to someone and just tell them like everything they need to hear. Like
it's actually great advice, but it's also like very dickish. The delivery is dickish.
Well, and Orpheus doesn't operate on many of these. Like, hey, I bet you could say from this episode onward he kind of improves some more. He starts his own team and gets adventuring again. So he recovers after this episode.
Yeah, I don't know if it's intentional, but yeah, it's true. He does kind of like he has more self-respect after.
And when we eventually do meet his ex-wife and the man, they're very well balanced and good people. And the point of the episode is like, no, you actually are a better magician than me, but that's because you are focused on it to the point of ignoring everything else in your life.
You sacrificed your wife and your family so you could be good at this, and I just took the shortcut.
Yep.
So they eventually have to test the gun on Billy, and it ends up shrinking parts of his body that are inside of him instead of his entire body.
That horrible fart joke. Oh.
So they shrink his lungs, and he's like dying, and Dr. Venture farts. And
think deviled eggs.
Yeah, they're not being very nice to Billy Quizboy.
And then there's a quick cut back to the adventures going on that were being denied, and just
I have a clip.
Hank, you and Caligula keep up the rear. No, on second thought, you and Freud should do it. Caligula, you take the second wave alone. Ready, Dean?
Whoa! Steady, perfect man. Ready, Brock?
When the gates open, me, Poe, and me rush in. You got that? You're gonna kill him when he shows up, aren't you? Oh, you know it.
Oh boy, I like how we are denied an action scene with 2 Brocks in it. Sorry, Henry, please.
Yeah, 2 Brocks in a giant action scene. A huge wave. Oh man, you better believe there's going to be an amazing army coming at them. They're going to fight all of them.
Edgar
Allan
Allan
so
Poe.
Great. that Dean is a head on top of a mummy with machine guns riding the perfect man. You're going to see it all. And they're like, nope.
I love how much of a screw you audience joke that is.
So great.
Yeah, like you will not see this expensive fight scene.
And just that reveal of like Poe and B. Well,
And you just know Brock wants to kill Dr. Venture if he ever shows up.
Yeah,
like, like, goddamn, I know you forgot about me because I know you and I know you're an idiot.
Yeah. I like when sometimes their cast is kind of friends who are like, we've been through a lot together. Like in the season premiere for 2, like that's when we both grew mustaches. That's fun.
Yeah, they were counting the numerous deaths of his children,
That's
by the way.
right.
And he's like, yeah, remember those hair plugs? Oh, that was awful.
But also he knows that Rusty is an incredibly selfish guy who will leave him to die. If Brock wasn't the toughest human being ever made, he would have been left to die a million times.
Rusty just disappeared. He's like, you guys figure it out.
He's
Brock's
never
strong.
coming back.
Yeah. So they don't really make the shrink ray work. They just make Billy's head a normal size and then make his body a normal size.
Yes. There is a great little gag of well, first there's the Riven joke we mentioned before, but also he calls him William Burroughs, which is a joke about how Beats poet writer William Burroughs played the game William Tell with his wife Joan Vollmer, who was also key into the Beat generation, except instead of shooting the shot glass on her head, he shot her in the head.
Ooh, see, it's not just pop culture, it's also literary references, too.
Yes.
Somebody took a class.
Burroughs was lucky he did that in Mexico because he could then just run away to America and never really face extradition, right?
I could have sworn I read something that said, I may have it in here's my many notes, is that he explained what happened to the authorities, and they're like, okay. And he let him go.
Well,
like
it's a real
guy.
whoopsie.
Yeah.
You feel bad enough already. You shot her in the head. Okay. So, folks, even if you own a gun, don't play William Tell, especially with a loved one.
Get a Nerf version of that going for yourself. Dr. Orpheus actually realizes how insignificant he is and how small he is.
I am a rube. I have been fooling myself my whole life.
Makes you feel pretty small, huh?
I am an insect. Look at that. We are nothing in the eyes of the cosmos. Tiny men going about our tiny days, believing we mean something. We are nothing.
Orpheus, you are my best and brightest pupil, even if you do taste a little salty. You're ready, Orpheus. Now get the hell out of this closet and go win that incredibly gay contest! Go! Go!
Yes, so in some ways, Dr. Orpheus won because he realized how small he actually is in the grand scheme of the universe.
You can see the master can see, like, look, I know you need a win, so fine, go win the contest, whatever. Like, it's stupid. Like, as he calls it incredibly gay, of course. Like, it's stupid. Like, this is all stupid, but
Well,
go win it, whatever.
He's telling him to get out of a closet, too.
That's true. Yeah. And that he could win, but also Orpheus is the bigger man. Like Rusty is shittier than Orpheus. He always will be.
Yeah, no, Orpheus is actually, resembles a decent person most of the time.
He's a workaholic.
Dr. Venture is one of the worst people in the world.
I would say Orpheus erasing his daughter's memory many times. Maybe that's not so nice.
He has flaws. He has flaws.
But yes, Dr. Venture, again, like living in the shadow of his father, he's just disappointed in himself that he can't even fix something his father invented. So he's just sort of
what a
sulking.
Loser. Yeah. And then he's just coming to the realization he has many times, like, I'm not my father and never will be.
Yes.
Like, I suck. And then I think it's a feeling that is across for just about every character in the show, is that they're all unhappy in roles that were given to them. Like,
that's true, yeah.
Dean doesn't want to be Dean. Hank doesn't want to. Like, Dean is like, I don't really like sweater vests is a perfect example of that. He's just like, I don't want to be this person.
He's forced to wear the speed suit.
Yeah, his birthday gift was a speed suit that he doesn't want from
Brock,
Venture.
and that Rusty doesn't understand he's passing along that expectations and pain to his own son. Brock is one of the few people who's actually happy in the show because he's fully self-actualized. He's like, no, I'm who I want to be. I'm pretty cool.
And he eventually leaves.
Yeah.
Even then he's irritated most of the time. But he does like to murder people. He's like, well, I get to do this in this job.
Yeah.
So.
I guess even he is a little frustrated.
No, you're really right. Like Dr. Venture is not very self-aware in that he does not like living in the shadow of his father, but he's making his boys be boy adventurers. In fact, like making many versions of his boys because he needs that in his life. Like, no, this is what we do. We go on adventures, and I'm fucking sick of it, but I have to do this.
And the only time they got to do character growth, they started doing character growth for Hank and Dean, is when they start going like, I don't have to be this person. No, and I'm feeling happier now.
Well, it's kind of funny, too, because, Dr. Venture tries to be a super scientist and fails miserably at it over and over. But he actually was a legitimately really good boy adventurer. Like, he was good at that.
Yeah.
And now he tries to make his boys be boy adventurers, and they're terrible at it. And he gets mad at them for not being as good as he was.
As good as me. And also, too, that I love when it's revealed in another episode by Dr. Henry Killinger that he is a perfect supervillain. But he's like, but I don't want to be a supervillain. He's like, this is perfect for you. What are you talking about?
You're jealous of your brother who's better than you in every way, including as a person.
You're awesome to be his villain.
Cain and Abel, the classic thing. You're Cain.
And he just has to hit this realization, oh, I am the villain of my life. Oh, shit.
In that episode, he goes, Brock, am I a bad person? Brock's like,
That is great. So Dr. Orpheus comes in and says, you win the contest, even though Dr. Orpheus is technically the smallest man in certain metaphorical ways. But even after sulking, after being a failure, Dr. Venture can't help but rub it in. He's gloating about it.
Yes, it's so great. And then he's like, oh, it's a gentleman's bet. Well, you would have won the gentleman.
If he kept silent, we would have won the gentleman. Yeah.
he thought he was going to win $1 million. But then Billy Quizboy comes in with a very important item.
Snacks! Good call, Billy. I'm starved over here.
No. Dr. Venture. Buck.
I haven't seen one of those in years.
A Rusty Venture lunchbox. It's not the one I had when I was a kid. This one I got on eBay. I can't use a thermos because it smells like old milk. Plus, some kid put Thundercat stickers all over it. Why do you have one of these?
Can't you see, Mr. Venture? You were the little boy man's hero.
You were the reason I became a boy genius.
Yeah, Rust. Every kid wanted to be you.
Yeah, I was pretty cool. That's me on the pterodactyl. Took him down myself.
Yes, you were pretty cool. Let us retire to my sitting room. I shall whip up a batch of my famous rice pudding. I feel like we have forgotten to do something.
Oh my God, you're right. I forgot to turn off the lights.
Oh, that Lunchbox is again going back to, he was Johnny Quest of this universe. The drawing is a Johnny Quest drawing from the 60s original show. The back of it is that too. And that, though this was previously established in the season premiere too, and you meet they try to introduce two new sidekicks. He's like, no, get out of here. I hate you guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he actually was Johnny Quest, and they actually even the weird thing in the Venture Brothers universe, he did have those adventures for real, but there's also a animated show brought to you by smoking.
Right.
It was a great joke.
And in the comics too. There were comic books.
So they made media of him, but he was also a real adventures he had.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned in the premiere, there's that guy who's basically his version of Haji, and it's like, you don't remember those adventures we went on? It's like, no.
Really?
I like the description of the old thermos, and that's actually the second old thermos joke in this series. I remember Dr. Girlfriend describing the fancy cheese the Invisible Guy was into. It's like, it tastes like the inside of an old thermos.
And it's such a great observation of clearly someone who has bought old lunchboxes on eBay, which is that it's not in pristine condition.
It's covered in Thundercat stickers.
Don't you dare open that thermos. You're not going to like the smell of it.
Do kids still use stuff like that?
I don't know.
I assume they do.
I was old enough that I had like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh man,
lunchbox
my prized lunchbox. Well, I had a first grade, I believe it was a He-Man. Second grade was Transformers, or
Classic.
reverse those two.
The only one I can remember having is a Jetsons the movie one, probably because it was $1 and we were poor.
No, I'm sure it's because you were a huge Jetsons fan.
Oh yeah, especially of the movie. That's peak Jetsons. So yes, I love again the mundanity. Like the magician who just visited like Satan is going to make rice pudding for everyone.
I hope I'll be at least magically.
But I feel like if Doctor Strange had like a home life, he would be Dr. Orpheus though.
Oh,
Because like Doctor Strange, not that Henry knows more than I do. I only read a few series of him, but he seems very boring, like as like a personal life kind of thing. Like I can't imagine him having any interesting hobbies. He's just magic dude all the time.
I mean, Cerberus called him Mr. Rogers in a cape.
Yeah.
And I like
that's basically strange.
We didn't mention it in the beginning, but yes, he more of the fantastic and the mundane together. He is like raking leaves with magic, just standing around like the brooms in Fantasia. He's like making the rakes move and rake leaves. So very funny.
As we get to the end credits and the post-credits gag, I want to complain. Hulu is very confused by post-credit gags, and it immediately brought up, well, you want to watch the next episode? I'm like, no, it's not done. Like, come on, Hulu.
I hate that on every service. Actually, I was at the gym, and I bring my tablet to the gym to watch stuff while I go on the elliptical machine. And I wanted to see like the next episode preview on an anime I was watching, and it's like, we're gonna skip to the next episode. I'm like, I don't know how to change this. I don't know how to make it. I don't know how to get this off of here. I want to see the preview, but I didn't see the preview. Yeah, but I love I forgot the end of every episode. It's like dun 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 dun, and you get a whole new scene after that. That's why I love a lot.
The post credits is beautiful, and this one is great. On the season 2 commentaries.
That's why I thought you were going to complain about.
They make a vow that they will never do a Star Wars reference again from season 3 onward, and I think they broke that.
Yeah,
well, they definitely broke it, but it did cut down like 99%.
They realized how played out a Star Wars reference was by 2000.
I mean, the Love Bite, was it Love Bites, the one with Underbite? That's just one long Star Wars.
It won't
reference.
stop. They're even taking the line of like Chewbacca Wookiee. I'm like, oh come on now.
This one I feel like maybe the last time in recorded history you can make this joke. Maybe it was a little too late for this joke, but I do like, once again, you're seeing part of this adventure you'll never see more of. They're promising another episode which they're not making. So here's the stinger scene.
The Venture Brothers.
I can't make it. I want to die. I want the caveman to eat me.
Hang on, hey! Cut him open! We're gonna put the boy in there! Whoa! I thought he smelled bad. On the outside.
So yeah, Brock number 2 cuts open Edgar Allan Poe for Hank to sleep inside. Like, I want the caveman to eat me.
I love that he's given up. He's like, I want to die. Let the caveman eat me. They are clearly in the long ago in the past, in prehistoric times, and caveman is hunting them and trying to eat them.
And we'll never see how they get out of this.
No.
It'll just be a normal episode.
Well, presumably
next week.
episode 3 was just about, you cut through them trying to escape through time and Dr. Venture just having a sandwich on the couch or something.
That'd be a very fitting Escape to the House of Mummies Part 3.
Oh, God. You never got it. But that's also why this is such a special episode, that everything's just normal again in the next one, which they were more into continuity after this, in times after this one, too. But
it's like season 3, I think, where they really started, like, you should probably watch these in order. Like, even season 2, you can watch most of them out of order. It won't matter, except for the first and last episode.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think 3 for sure had the most, like, ties between episodes throughout the season.
And it starts with a whole bunch of, like, backstory, too. It starts with a whole bunch of, like, their past and stuff. So, that's when they really start taking their own universe maybe too seriously.
And it was funny to watch this now on a streaming service, because that's how I first watched this episode when it was new, because when the series started, I had just moved to Berkeley and we didn't have cable at my place yet. And so I was like, well, I can't watch this weekend. I simply cannot miss this. So I went to a internet cafe and streamed Adult Swim on the channel. They were really ahead of the curve on the streaming stuff at Adult Swim.
It's true, actually. Like, I don't know why I said actually, because I'm agreeing with you. But on Fridays, the Friday before Sunday's Adult Swim lineup, all of the shows would be on the website on Friday. And I remember, like, literally my 2 college friends and I, Friday night, we would be all in our separate places, but we'd go on to AIM and then start all the shows together and watch them together and chat about them in the chat boxes. So, yes.
Yeah, what a time. When the season premiere of 2 came out 2 days early, this awakened memories for me. That there were things on the Venture blogs or the Live Journal, too, of like, do not spoil this for folks who don't have the website. Like, let people watch it on Adult Swim on Sunday night, folks. Don't spoil it.
For younger listeners, you might not know that, like, broadband internet wasn't really a thing until, like, the early 2000s, like 2001 or 2.
Even by 2006, not you couldn't count on everyone in America having it.
I remember, this is how much of a rich, spoiled kid I was.
Oh, geez.
I was the first kid in my neighborhood to have broadband internet.
Me too.
I actually had early access. I had, like, in 1998, I had cable internet.
Wow.
And I felt like I was the only person I knew who had it.
I had kids come over and be like, look at this internet speed. Wow. Because, before then, you were getting, like, 2 kilobytes a second.
I was like, I can finally download all the Weezer B-sides I don't have.
Michael and Carly is my favorite Weezer B-side.
Oh, that's a good one. God, okay, let's move on. I like that one a lot. I was like, there's got to be a better one. It's like, no, I like that one.
We're doing the Weezer podcast now.
Yes, talking about a band that peaked 30 years ago. Sorry.
20.
Only 20.
Only 20.
So yes, this series is great. Once again, I must say, like I say at the end of every episode, I want to watch all of this again, and it's all on Hulu, correct?
And I want to do a podcast for all of them too. Yes. Every episode. Adult Swim, I think their deal with Hulu is like, well, you only get there's like a 2-year-ish cutoff or whatever. You don't get the most recent season, but Venture Brothers has been off the air for so long that the most recent season is on.
I'm actually kind of impressed, not that I'm, a Hulu rep or anything, but I'm actually kind of impressed they even have like all the specials in the pilot on the Venture Brothers. So you can actually start from the beginning and just leave it on. You'll get every single bit of Venture Brothers aired media.
Hulu's pretty good. It's unfortunate that Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon basically fight over all the things you want to watch, so they're spread out enough that you kind of have to have all of them to watch them legitimately.
I do have all of them, and I also have like 2 anime subscriptions.
Me too.
It's like you're basically buying another cable package, but this is the future.
Cord cutting is actually not cheaper after all, it turns out.
It's not, but it is cheaper than buying DVDs. I remember at one point I did have all the Venture Brothers DVDs, but when things got tight, I had to be like, okay, goodbye.
I love when I think it was season 2 had the art by Bill Sankiewicz. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, the art on the DVDs and Blu-rays is fantastic.
The Venture Brothers DVDs are pretty much the only DVDs I own, because I'm not like a physical media guy in general, but I wanted those commentaries, I wanted those, the artwork you mentioned, like
And the
great.
extras, the bonuses they make are really great too. Yeah, they're totally worth it. I bet you can get most of those DVDs for like a nickel now. On
like
eBay.
even new, if you want a DVD, it's not going to be more than $10. Like
If you take it off Amazon's hands, they're happy.
get this out of my warehouse.
You can probably buy all 6 seasons for like $40 or $50.
Probably, yeah. But if you don't want to do that, if you don't want commentaries, it's all on Hulu, like we said. But thank you, Dave, for bringing this to us. I think this is our first Adult Swim show. We have like 40 other Adult Swim episodes to do, but I'm glad we finally got around to doing an Adult Swim thing, especially something as great as this. And hopefully we can do more of this in the future. So, Dave, you're a special guest. Why don't you tell us who you are, where we can find you on the internet, and tell you your opinions are wrong if we disagree with you?
Well, so I don't have much of an internet presence. I have a Twitter that I don't tweet on much. DWit55. No, don't forget to follow me for any reason. I don't tweet much. It's mostly for reading other people's, tweets. Henry's great tweets, obviously.
Oh, thank you. You're not complimenting Bob's tweets.
Hey, wait a minute.
No, Bob's...
I've got more followers than him.
Actually, Bob talked about One Piece, so never mind. He wins.
Oh, good.
Boo.
I'm the superior.
But yeah, no, I'm a social media hermit anyway, so nothing for you.
You're not broken like us. It's fine. Henry, please tell us where we can find you. Then I'll go into the whole spiel.
Okay, well, you could follow me on Twitter as HENEREYG, where you get updates on whenever these episodes goes live and all my thoughts and maybe some comic book deals too. If you like this comic book talk on here, I am a bit of a comic book nerd. I maybe don't read all of One Piece, but I have read all 1,000 issues of Amazing Spider-Man. I have read that. So,
and I've been your host, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo, and I have a few things to ask of you, the nice and kind, generous listener. Number one, it's absolutely free for you to do. It would take 5 minutes. Go to iTunes and leave us a review. I feel like we've gotten a lot so far. We can always use more, and that helps make our show more visible to people. I saw in the past month or so we've appeared on certain podcast apps like Check This Out sort of features. So I'm glad. However that happened, thank you. Thank you to the podcasting gods. But I do want to tell you about our Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, we can give you a lot for just $5 a month. That is the most popular tier that we offer. What you get is this show, What a Cartoon, and Talking Simpsons a week ahead of time, and ad-free. You also get series like Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, any future miniseries we do. Those are all going to be Patreon exclusive. And we also have interviews, and we also have a monthly community podcast where we respond to your questions. Henry, what else can we give these nice people?
Well, you'll also get Talking Futurama, where we've been going through the entire first season of Futurama exclusively for Patreon. So if you want to hear us talk about classic episodes about biting shiny metal robot asses, you'll only hear it there. Same for The Critic. If you love the classic John Lovett's animated series, The Critic, you can hear us go through every single episode of it. That includes the webisodes.
We did the webisodes, so you don't have to watch them.
Only on Patreon.
Yeah, that was torturous to rewatch for that.
Oh, boy.
We're sorry.
I don't want anyone to rewatch those for our podcast.
I'm lying. I didn't really rewatch it.
Also, we do season wrap-ups for every season of The Simpsons. You can find on the Patreon as well. And for $10 supporters, you get a monthly exclusive video, including me and Bob going through every short of The Simpsons to fully complete our nostalgic look back at The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next week with the Samurai Jack episode, The Princess and the Bounty Hunters. We'll see you then.
Mummy Muggy. He's a good mummy, Dino. Right? Muggy friend. Muggy like his chin rubbed. Who's a good mummy?